I turned 20 around 4 months ago at this point, in December of 2024. And I'm an aspiring writer. I'm an aspiring author, I guess. I don't know. I feel like the term's kind of cringe, but um, oh, the um, when I was around probably 16 or 17, um, a mentor figure of mine that I always talk to about video games, like stories in video games specifically, and TV shows and movies, like Doctor Who was a big thing, and like it was a big thing just for me in general. And it wasn't until like a specific mountain bike riding session, there weren't many, but one of them that we did together, um, he brought up the idea of originally, like, what if you started like making your own stories, write them? And I was like, that could be interesting, cool. Sounds like a lot of work though. Um, and so I didn't really take it too seriously. I try to look into, because I always liked the visual aspect of video games or movies or TV, and I didn't really read that much. So I looked into either writing for movies and like learning how to create movies or video games, stuff like that. And there were times, multiple times in my life, that I've gotten into game development using Unity, Godot, or Unreal, or I wanted to create stuff, but I just didn't love the technical aspect enough to stay in it. So I never actually got to see like fruits of that labor. Then on the movie making TV side, I also like I enjoy it as like a hobby, filmmaking, but I don't love it, I guess, if we're being real, or at least love it enough, like love it to the extent that I love writing, where I could put it down and kind of forget about it for a while. And it's fun every now and then to do stuff and like shoot stuff and create little things. I've created like a couple of like short little, I don't even want to call them movies, but like short videos that I put like sunk a lot of time into, that I'm like pretty happy with, like because they're just like, I would just make them like make my friends laugh and stuff. But I didn't love it, and the more I looked into like the business side of those things, the more I realized I kind of would rather just write the stuff, meaning that like because for a while I was like, maybe I'll be a director. Okay, that could be cool. But then I didn't like having to deal with other people in terms of, you know, having like a lighting crew and or like an actual cinematographer, so like stuff like that, where I was like, I just want to make the thing that's in my head. I don't want other people to like not have a say in it, but I didn't want other people's influence to like outwardly kind of just take over, which is saying it is pretty not self-centered, but like probably not a great thing. But part of the joy was that it was these worlds or stories that like I could visualize in my head, and I was trying to make a reality, and that would kind of negatively influence it. On top of all, it's like it just kind of seemed like a lot of bullshit that I didn't want to deal with, for still a payoff, but like too much kind of nonsense that I didn't actually care enough about to make it worthwhile. Or like I know like the classic, like you can love what you do, but there's still going to be an element of it that you absolutely hate, and but you love the thing enough so you're willing to suffer through that. And I realized, especially with making video games and filmmaking, there wasn't enough upside to make it worthwhile. And it wasn't until that mentor figure floated the idea, like, what if you just like write a book, or just like actually write stories? Like, why not? And I was like, all right. I mean, I don't know, like it loses the visual side, so I was like, that kind of sucks. But I would actually get to just tell the story, and then I'm also not limited to like what I can access or buy in real life. It could actually just be up to my imagination. Like it's a no holds barred basically, and that is what sparked my interest. And I think I was 16 at the time, and I basically created a pretty basic outline for a first book. It was like a time travel mafia type story, and I wrote the first chapter. And it was pretty cool. I enjoyed it a lot. I still remember like a bunch of elements from it that were terrible, but like it was fun, and it was a good experience. And I remember also the feeling that I got from watching my mentor figure read that first chapter. And it was the first time I had to see someone like actually experience something that I created, that it was just entirely me. There was no influence from anyone else. It was me on a Google Doc coming up with a story, just coming up with something cool, or at least that I thought was cool. And because I never really read that much, my grammar was and still is to an extent terrible. I do a lot of editing to like kind of fix it. So especially I was showing him a draft 1 version when I like hadn't written anything besides like school essays. So I'm sure if I haven't looked at it in a long time. I'm sure if I went back, it's probably a horrific read. And my mentor figure, he made notes on that, and he was like, yeah, like the grammar is like awful, whatever, but he was like, it's pretty cool in terms of like, he was like, it's so interesting seeing like you actually tell a story and how your brain can translate a story into words and put it on a page to try and actually express it. And I'll never forget, that was like, still like, I haven't gotten like a lot of advice or like notes on anything, but that is still probably like the most interesting thing I've heard and coolest things I've heard, especially about something I've created, was that yeah, I never thought about it like that yeah, it's basically what I write, because it's coming from my head. You're actually essentially reading my thoughts, which is so cool. And Brandon Sanderson always says that it's like writing is the closest thing to like telepathy, I think he says, because you're trying to create the image in your head but for other people through words on a page. And yeah, and you would think again that would basically be it. Like, that's the crazy start story. But no, obviously I wrote that first chapter and I was like, that was kind of hard though. And because I was still in high school, I was kind of busy and super lazy. And so I basically I just stopped. Even though I really enjoyed it, I was like, it's too hard, basically. But like, I vividly remember saying, I will continue at some point. Which usually I say that, and it is completely meaningless, and it never happens again. But it felt like I meant it for some reason. And it wasn't until years later, until I was 19, and my brother and his roommate at the time had an idea for a story where basically they had essentially a magic system that they thought would make a cool anime. And me and my mentor figure at the time, we were talking to them about it. We were like, this is sick. Like, you guys should make this. And they were like, yeah, no, we're not gonna do that. And we're like, what? Why not? Like, you've created the whole thing here. Why put the time into that, but then not actually want to do it? Like, yeah, too much work. And that started the idea of like, I could try and make the story you're thinking, which in hindsight was it's sort of almost like a mix of, I kind of made it the issue that I had with movies and video games, that I was taking other people's influences to kind of take on mine, but it got me started, so I don't care. And I started basically, created my first book, Echoes of Time. Terrible. It is absolutely awful. Complete nonsense. It was basically, I was writing it. I've discovery written all my books, and that one, especially because I was trying to get like my footing, I wrote that in probably a month, maybe a month and a half, and it was around 650 or 60,000 words. I don't remember exactly. And I like even thinking about my thought process while making it. It was a complete shit show while writing it, but I was loving it. It was great. I had basically not much to do because it was like the end of senior year, so I was kind of just hanging out, doing nothing. And or no, sorry, it wasn't senior year. I was actually in my first year of community college, and I was online at the time, so yeah, I was actually doing nothing, and yeah, I blew through it. I think yeah, 50. I think it was 50,000 words in a month, and it completed the first book, Echoes of Time. That was the name I landed on. It was like a time travel story that is like a sci-fi time travel type cyberpunk story, and it's awful. Like I realized, my entire first book basically lacks almost all of the major like human senses besides visual. So it's terrible. It's trash. But I still like it to like look back on. Um, and yeah, it was a blast. And it immediately started. I was like, okay, this is pretty. I really like this. It was the first thing in my life, in reality, that I started and didn't want to stop, and also didn't stop. Where it was day in and day out. I would my goal was a chapter a day, which ended up being for that book like 2,000 words. So it was like relatively short. Well, no, pretty short. I think it ended up being 26 or something chapters in total, and like the ending was a complete nonsense. I actually never figured it was like a trying to be a cliffhanger to be continued, but I never actually figured out how to make it make sense in the world because I kind of it was a crapshoot all around. But it got me started, and then I immediately went into my second book, The Dethroned King, which I actually I want to go back and complete because I wrote technically 2 parts to it, but in total there would be 4. But I sort of wrote part 1 and part 3, thinking that they would be separate, but then I basically just made them in the same world and they would be connected. And I actually really like, at least in my head, I don't know how it came out on the page, I haven't read it in a long time, but I really, really liked it. So I do want to actually go back and probably do a mass overhaul of the entire thing, and then also write part 2 and part 4, I guess. And yeah, and that one, again, I did more legwork in terms of actually trying to understand like the craft of writing. I watched a bunch of Brandon Sanderson's courses on YouTube, which now I'm watching. He's doing one right now, actually, another one, and it's great. And the feeling I got from writing it was amazing, but then also, again, having people I know read it and hear their feedback and talk about characters that I've completely made up, but like actually have some connection to, it's like cringe, but a pretty magical feeling, I feel like, because that was the feeling, that was what I was chasing basically when I was younger. Like, and what I always chased in video games and movies is stories between characters in worlds that aren't real but tie real life elements into, because I always connected with that. I always connected more with characters and stories than real people for some reason, and I just want to create that for people. I want to create what inspired me and still does. I want to join in that creative flow. I don't want to just consume. I want to add to it and actually bring emotion to people, whether it be good or bad, depending on the book. But yeah, and after that, then it was a 4th book that I actually never titled. I got around 40,000 words in, and it was the first book in reality that I was doing like consistently that it wasn't turning out well, and so I decided to stop basically writing it. and it was around 40-ish thousand words, and so I decided to just kind of kill it. And then I pretty quickly started my 5th book, which is the one I'm querying now, that I've edited the most, I would say learned the most on, and I like the most out of all my books so far. It's around 90,000 words. It's called Blood of the Fallen, or at least that's the title now. My mentor figure, actually, coolest gift by far I've ever received, because he said he was so proud of me of like working towards this, and he wants to have like a physical show of like my work instead of just like these long Google Docs basically. And so he had my friend's girlfriend, who's an insanely talented artist, make, I guess it's backwards, but basically they actually printed the book and made awesome cover art for it. It's actually an older edit of the book, so it's like a Gen 2 or 3, when now I'm in like Gen 4 of the draft. But still, it doesn't matter. It's still the coolest gift I've ever gotten. And to actually see my book as like a book for the first time was and still is a pretty crazy feeling. It's on my desk, and it basically never leaves my desk. I always love looking at it and just kind of putting things into perspective. But yeah, like as a 20-year-old now, I've done this now for a little over a year. In total, I've written probably 350 to 400,000 words. Me trying to seriously actually do this, and I'm loving it. I would say like it feels like it's what I'm meant to be doing. This feels like this will be my career. I'm relatively confident that it will be. I don't know the timetable of that's for sure. I'm hoping sooner than later, but who knows? I'm 20 now, and so I'm hoping, or I wonder, looking back on this when I'm 22, 25, 30, 40, if it might be like the dang, small beginnings, or it'll be, what a joke. So it could go either way, but I'm pretty confident, because I'm not gonna stop. So I'm pretty confident that I will get published at some point. Hopefully soon. I for some reason feel like Blood of the Fallen is the book that will be published, or at least my first book that will be published. It just feels the most, I don't know how to describe it besides like it feels the most right, and it feels like it's the one. That could just be me putting out like just wanting it to be the one, which is very possible. But I actually believe like in my bones that it is the best thing I've written. I actually think it's cool, which of course like that's like the main thing you want, and it's a book that I would actually read, in my opinion. And it also opened. It's like a world that I would love to go into more if I had the chance to, because I feel like I've made it. Well, I'll leave it at that, but yeah, I would say as a person that never really had anything, not going for him, but anything that stuck with him and actually held his interest for the most part, writing is the thing that will be my life. Money or not. Ideally with money, but can't always have what you want. So that is what it is. It's just, yeah, I don't know. So I think it'd also be interesting to see these videos, again, if they're still up by then, but when I'm older and I have like kids, depending on whatever I'm doing, whether it be writing or nothing, just to like see, like for my kids and grandkids to like see my thought process now, just to like document it, is kind of like a story in itself. But I don't know, it's just fascinating. All right, see ya.